I was harsh on my original review of the last DDA series, Eye of Traldar and Dymrak Dread. They're not good modules by any means. Dymrak Dread could have easily been a mid-tier Dungeon Magazine adventure. Eye of Traldar strips Fort Doom of all the famous characters living there. But sometimes, authors are forced to write things that the editors think are a good idea, and no amount of logic or reason will overcome the vision of the misguided editor. These modules are a perfect example of that. The first seems more like a spin-off pilot from a popular show, and the second is the spin-off that is nothing like what was promised. There's reasons for that, and I don't know if this is a review or an autopsy. Welcome to Mystara. I'm Mr. Welch, and this is what it sounds like when DMs cry. Modules DDA 3 and 4 were written by TSR Standards Carl Sargent and John Nephew, respectively, in 1991. The last BECMI module was written explicitly for the Mystara line. After that, it was all Thunder Rift all the time until the line entirely switched to 2nd edition. Jeff Easley made some uncharacteristic art compared to his usual style, but it would have been some absolutely bitchin' van art in the 80s. He also did the Dymrak Dread cover art, and while another departure from his usual style, it didn't deviate as far. Tom Baxa did all the interior art for both books. The Eye of Traldar has the party infiltrating the Black Eagle Barony to steal the titular relic from Baron von Hendrix himself. Finally, we were going to see the long-fabled Fort Doom. Honestly, if it didn't look like Castle Grayskull, we were going to be disappointed.
Get used to disappointment.
Nowhere in this book are there any illustrations of Fort Doom. Also, the Baron and Bargle are off at the Evil Convention in another part of the known world, and they've taken every minion over the level of 3. The module is for levels 1 to 2, and you can't have a 15th level evil wizard blasting your characters to ash if they fail a stealth check. Instead, you get some stand-ins with minor officers that were never mentioned before or after, and they won't be missed if you stab them. Originally, the Baron was returning for Dymrak Dread with a vengeance. Now the level 2 to 3 characters are facing a high-level fighter with his heavily armed bodyguards, chasing you down to get the eye back. You have absolutely no chance of beating them, no hope of survival on your own, and your only option is to run. Nothing makes for better motivation in a railroad adventure than putting a speeding train on one end of it. Bargle doesn't appear anywhere in this module as intended. He's far too powerful, sadistic, and intelligent for the party to deal with at such a low level. Just assume he's in the 5 Shires helping with their annual Adopt-a-Puppy event. The adventure starts with an ambush. The party has finished some successful caravan work to lull when those pesky Iron Ring slavers attack. Fortunately, they're warned by the arrival of a plot-mandated sidekick and exposition device, and the fight is on. If the characters kill a few of the slavers, the rest bugger out, and they get the promised exposition dump from their new best friend. He explains that the Iron Ring has stolen the Eye of Traldar, and that it will let the Baron spy on the surrounding area with impunity once he gets back from taking his family to Barrymore World. The party has to get to Luln for more information, and then go and recover the stolen relic. The characters take their new friends to Luln, where, wouldn't you know it, the Iron Ring has another ambush prepared for them. These guys are worse than ninjas in Street Fighter. No matter where you go, they seem to have infinite mooks ready to start a fight. They're going to lose, and they're just there to force the plot along. The party is then told the Iron Ring is after them and is waiting in ambush along every possible route, so they need to go to Fort Doom and get the eye. The players may wonder why the Iron Ring is such a threat, since all they really do is bleed and die, but the plot needs them to happen. So, reasoning the closer they are to danger, the further they are from harm, it's Doomin' time. The characters must now sneak through the deadly dungeons of Fort Doom. This requires them to go through a secret dungeon filled with hideous monsters that prevent the escape of prisoners from the dungeons above. At least any prisoners 2nd level or under, because these are some pretty low-level bad guys. That seems to be a reoccurring theme with every potential enemy just being 1 or 2 hit die, or no higher than 2nd level for fighting classes. And this is one of the most feared places in Karamikos. Having the party face a couple of ghouls, a single gnoll, some skeletons, and a few giant rats is going to drive down its Yelp reviews because people are going to be disappointed with the experience. When the party does get to the actual dungeons, the quality of the bad guys does get a bit better, and a fair bit more numerous. This is where the party is encouraged to find disguises, and don't worry too much about the mooks here because they aren't the brightest. The party has access to quite a bit of healing, so when they get to the end of this part, they should be able to freshen up their hit points. Resting for spells is up to the DM. The party has to get to the tower, where they will face various guards and some underpowered officers, until they get to the final fight, where it's them against 3 bosses and some mooks. Kill them, get the eye, module's over. It boils down to a wilderness fight, a city fight, and 3 dungeons. The toughest boss only has 15 hit points. The Ogre Guard has 9. Most baddies should go down in a single hit. For a castle with such a fierce reputation, it feels like you're going up against Junior Varsity. The module feels like you're going to evil Disneyland and discovering all the rides are closed except for the kids section. From all the hype, you're expecting this to be the module that puts Tomb of Horrors to shame. You will be bridging pit traps with the corpses of all the characters that have died so far. And you're not going to beat this module, you're going to survive it. Your elf is going to come out of Eye of Traldar, 1 level higher, 100 gold pieces richer, with a new magic potion, and at least 20 years of PTSD. Instead, you get the equivalent of the local neighborhood's Halloween haunted house. You remember the one where it was all jump scares that were terrifying all the little kids? Still, you were a high school junior dressed up like a World War I trencher with limited vision and hearing because of the gas mask, so you couldn't see any of the jump scares. Then when they put your hand in the worms, which is actually nothing more than just spaghetti, they don't realize you're wearing thick leather gloves because there's not an ounce of skin exposed on you because you know the effects of Jerry's gas if it touches flesh. Then for some reason, nobody bothered to take the actual bayonet off your Springfield because nobody would think to bring a rifle to a Halloween haunted house. And instead, all the adults there want to look at the Springfield because it's the most awesome thing they have seen in a while. Besides, nobody was looking at you. They were too busy checking out your fully bearded friend smoking his cigar while wearing his mother's wedding dress, which somehow fit him with almost no alterations despite the guy was built like a Slavic battering ram, making you wonder what his mother could bench press back nearly 20 years ago. Man, the 80s were different. Where was I? If you want to make this adventure at least partially live up to its potential, you have to make it scary. Steal from the updated Fort Doom, meaning there's going to be upgrades. Bargle is still the court wizard. Sverdlov, or whoever he was supposed to be, doesn't exist. The Baron is away like the plot mandates, but his wife isn't, nor is his middle son Frederick. The characters will need to learn the politics of the keep very quickly. The troops have a pecking order. The Vakturm are the elites, and there's no impersonating them. They know each other on sight, and they speak a heavily accented Phaeacian. They will spot an imposter among them immediately. The regular troops are considered mercenary scum. These are what the party has to copy as they're expendable and none of the higher-ups bother to learn their names. The humanoids are lowest on the tier and can be bullied by the regular troops. Just don't let Morgash, their Thule commander, catch you, as he will figure out you're an imposter. In short, avoid named characters. The party must sneak into the tower, avoiding the gaze of the competent guards, keeping out of sight of officers, or if given an order, doing it quickly to get back to their job. You can have them run into Sophia, who might recognize someone's accent, and they will have to butter her up or talk fast to avoid raising suspicion. Frederick von Hendricks might recognize the party as intruders, but thinks it would be an awesome game to play. They have to keep him entertained while he tags along, but as long as he's being friends with the party, none of the guards will dare call into question the heir to Fort Doom's new besties. Time to roleplay it up. If asked, the Baron is meeting with some local lords. He's taken Otto with him. Bargle is at the Derrican masked ball, tampering with coach breaks in the parking lot. And Amelie is doing her thing in Specularum. For now, it's the Frederick von Hendricks show. Don't think about kidnapping or harming him. There's at least 100 Vakturm stationed there, and they will defend the prince to the death. Most likely your death. If he sounds threatened, it's time to run for the scary men in shiny black armor. Now imagine that the follow-up to this module had the Baron arriving to discover his artifact missing, and then tearing after the party with a sizable force to get it back. He's far too powerful for them to deal with even at level 3, so they have to run. They get the lull where other factions wanting the artifact start to stir. Now they have to deal with the evil Boris Toronescu out to get the amulet for himself, rival orc clans wanting to destroy Luln, and a sentient goblin war machine capable of breaching the city's walls for whatever side can gain control over it.
Just hook it to my veins!
This also introduces the Baron's new court wizard, which happens to be rather expendable, which is why they swapped him with Bargle in the last adventure. Now, forget all of that, because that was the original Dymrak Dread before TSR cut the page count in half, changed it to a rather simplistic dungeon crawl, and scrubbed all real ties to previous modules. So what do we get in return for TSR deciding that all future modules are low-level dungeon crawls? Well, we get a really nice map, so there is that. That's one of the reasons why this module is so expensive despite being so short. We now have a 2-level dungeon. The Dymrak Dread is a goblin chief, not a war machine. Add 2 lizardmen, 6 goblins, 1 goblin wokon, a buff goblin, a dozen giant centipedes, a giant spider with a save or die attack, so there's that. 6 zombies and a wight, in a 16-page dungeon crawl. Remember to give the party at least a silver or a +1 weapon, or the wight will slaughter them all, especially with the whole -1 level per hit. Low-level parties always appreciated level drainers and beginner adventures. Oh wait, no they didn't. This module was a total letdown. It doesn't help that it was a replacement module for something that would have been far more in-depth and linking back to the lore of Karamikos, much like Arena and Legions tied into Dawn of the Emperors. Now it's a simple kill the bad guy for cash scenario. Looking at a dungeon magazine from the same year of the release, in this case, Dungeon 31, you've got 2 adventures that are longer than Dymrak Dread. The Eye of Traldar is mentioned once in this book in passing, as you give it back to Luln and became the big heroes temporarily. This isn't a good module. Worse, it could have been a great one if half the original ideas were implemented. But this is the 90s era of TSR, and worse, the 90 eras of Mystara. Sacrifices had to be made. The worst part of this is it ended the BECMI part of BECMI. There was no further high-level play. There was no further medium-level play. It was all starter adventures for Thunder Rift without exception. No chance of fighting Nagpa, Griffins, Dragons, Rocks, Gakaroks, or Vampires. It was level 3 from here on out. It wasn't in the game if it couldn't be represented on a square grid map. So no more hex crawls, cross-country adventures, political intrigue, or plane-hopping epics. TSR had a vision for Mystara that didn't include 80% of its rules. And it suffered for it. The last remaster will be the conversion of Horde of the Dragon Queen into the Mystara setting. I know nobody cares much about this module and it's horribly dated, but it's also possibly the worst video I've ever made, having to do it on my phone as the computer was out of service. But once I'm done with that, it's all Welcome to Mystara and Mad Musings from then on out. Unless I decide to start up my Welcome to Echo Base series. But until then, remember, if it doesn't have a skull for a front gate, is it really a Fort Doom?